TNCRadio.LIVE, your commercial driver navigation station.
Good afternoon. This is TNCRadio.LIVE, and this is the Truckers Network Radio Show with your host, Shelley Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Yes, this is the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNCRadio.LIVE, where we offer the entertainment, sports, weather, traffic, news, and information that commercial drivers want to hear. Achieving success is something that everyone wants. But the problem is going about making that happen. There always seem to be obstacles that get in our way. We decided to see how we could help drivers achieve success. So today we have David Essel. He's a #1 best-selling author, life coach, and counselor. He's been endorsed by Marriage.com and Psychology Today. He's a leader in the positive thinking movement and author of Focus, which helps you achieve success and slay your goals. Welcome, David. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, Shelley, really happy to be with you and helping your audience for sure.
I was wondering if we could start with you telling us a little bit more about yourself and how you help people achieve success.
Yeah. You know, Shelley, I started in this industry 42 years ago in the world of sports psychology in 1980. Just before that, my work began, and in 1990, we transferred into the world of general counseling, helping people. And then, of course, we started writing books. I've hosted radio and television shows for years. And the #1 thing we try to do with success is we ask people to break it down to one major goal to go after at a time. And this is a little different in the work we do than general counseling or general life coaching. A lot of times, and we used to do this in the past, up until about 1992, we would work on people with multiple areas of their life at once. So we'd say over the next 7 days, let's do a little bit to enhance your relationship, a little bit to change your financial situation, a little bit to change your health, maybe your spiritual path, and we'll talk next week. And then we ended up finding that by people going after multiple goals at the same time, Shelley, we were really giving them a foot out the door to drop their goal achievement process. In other words, if we had them starting out on weight and they were working on their weight and eating healthy, and then all of a sudden they hit a weekend where they went off track, they go, well, it's not really the weight I need to work on. Let me get into my relationship. I need to focus on that. And they go for a couple of weeks and they'd hit a block and they go, well, it's really not about my relationship. Maybe I should put more time in my spiritual path. And so then in the early 90s, we came up with something we called the one thing theory. And the definition is very simple. The one thing theory states that at any given time in life, there's only one major goal to go after. And we limit our clients to going after one goal at a time. It's usually the goal we'd rather not approach. It's the one we've been avoiding. Maybe it's taxes. Maybe it's an addiction. Maybe it's an unhealthy relationship. And whatever it is that creates the most angst, anxiety, frustration, anger, whatever you want to call it, we then switch to helping our clients attack that one major goal, Shelley. And then once we saw momentum and once we saw them seeing progress, which could be anywhere from 2 to 6 months to a year, then we would say, okay, let's go into the next one. But the major mistake people make today is they try to quit smoking, lose weight, save their relationship, make more money and more. And we get just in this tangle of mess. So instead, for our listeners right now, the question would be this: what is the one area that you would like to change? What's the one area you've avoided, procrastinated on, denied, delayed working on? And when we find that one area of life, then we can start to see success. But if we keep going back to the multiple goal attack situation, we're probably going to be in the same place we are right now 10 years down the road.
Do you think that human nature, people just try to take on everything? I mean, it's kind of like a New Year's resolution. They're setting themselves up for failure because they're taking on too much.
Yeah, and you're 100% correct. It is like New Year's resolutions where you say, I'm going to quit smoking, lose weight, make more money, and save my marriage. And you know, the problem with a lot of the philosophies, and we call them mass consciousness philosophies, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But a lot of these mass consciousness philosophies, we don't question, Shelley. Mm-hmm. Like, we accept them as if they're valid because they've been around for a long time. A great example is knowledge is power. A complete lie. Complete fallacy.
Yep.
Absolute.
But I've heard it said so much by people. Isn't that interesting?
I know. And that's just like, New Year's resolutions, right? People set them every year. They're never or rarely successful, but they set them the next year and they're rarely successful. And so what you just said is true. Oh my gosh, we've heard that statement, knowledge is power. I mean, I think if it was Edison who said it, I forget who the quoted was, but, and we take it for granted. And yet, knowledge can't do anything unless action is applied with the knowledge.
Very true.
So you can have someone with 7 PhDs, but it doesn't mean anything unless they're putting that work into action. And so we say you can be as smart as you want with home repairs, do it yourself work or whatever. You can read all the books, watch all the YouTube videos, but until you put it into action, we really don't know where we stand.
It kind of reminds me of a story my mother told me, and I think she was trying to impress upon me that it isn't just learning in the knowledge, but doing something with it. She talked about some guy, I don't know what his name was, who carried his college textbooks around in the trunk of his car. And it gave him a sense of power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until one day somebody stole his car. And all of his knowledge was gone because he didn't bother to remember what he learned or use it,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's just so classic. Another statement of mass consciousness, and what mass consciousness means is that we are swept up into the river of life without questioning what people are saying or telling us our statistics or whatever it might be. Like we've really got to get clear. Mass consciousness is very powerful. Another word for it is peer pressure. We have people arguing about politics. We have people arguing and yet, a lot of them are only arguing because someone they look up to, whether that person is right or wrong. Oftentimes a media individual is who we look up to. And, I've been in the media for 40 years and I can tell you, don't look up to me for political advice. Don't look up to me for anything other than what my strengths are. But, with mass consciousness, your neighbors start talking about X, you get swept up, you start reading conspiracy theories, you think you know everything, when in actuality, from what I've seen in this country, really no one knows much about anything. Kelly, that's just the truth.
Well, and and with social media, you're seeing all of these things on Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, and you've got all these social media influencers, and you want to be just like them, but it doesn't fit, right? I mean, or people want to still, is it peer pressure? They want to be like everybody else?
Oh, gosh. And when you're talking social media, Shelley, it's one of the worst places in the world to spend time. If we want to have a clear mindset and achieve goals, we encourage people to spend a minimal amount of time as possible on social media. And, the word influencers drives me nuts. I'm so glad you brought it up because, I mean, we have influencers who do not know what they're talking about or what they're trying to influence. And it's a very scary situation because they're on a podcast or because they're on social media, or maybe they have a TV segment or a radio show. We take them as experts, and we have to be very cautious because in this scene, we're giving our power away. And it happened to me, and I tell this story all the time. When I first started, I had my teachers, my gurus, and they were all about, in the world of personal growth, they were all about the law of attraction. And most of us have heard about the law of attraction. And, I taught it for 16 years. It never worked for me. I doubt if it worked for many of the millions of people that I was flying all over the world speaking about. And in 1996, I got the shock of my life that the law of attraction as it's being taught is, again, an absolute lie. And for our listeners, a really quick synopsis of the law of attraction is the law of attraction teachers state quite blatantly in their belief system that whatever you put out into this so-called universe, your thoughts must return in kind. Now, it sounds really great. Like all I have to do is sit back, put myself on Fiji, put myself as owning 10 rental properties and not having to work again. And basically that's what they teach, is that as whatever you visualize, whatever you affirm, whatever you write about must come to you. So I was one of those people, mass consciousness. highly influenced by peer pressure with individuals that I highly respected and put on pedestals, was teaching, and I was basically, Shelley, a parrot. And then in 1996, one of the greatest teachers that I have ever had who passed away, he was the founder of Transcendental Meditation, which is the most studied form of meditation in the world.
Okay.
I had him as a guest on my radio show at the time, and he totally exposed the fallacy to my thinking in a beautiful way. And so, even someone who supposedly is educated as I am, got caught up into mass consciousness, into peer pressure. And I just started repeating things that these very famous people were saying, even though it was incorrect. And now my work is to do the opposite. Just like we were talking about a second ago, knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know it's not power. Now we know the law of attraction doesn't work. I mean, I have yet to meet a successful athlete. I just interviewed on a new TV show we're hosting a guy named Keith Mitchell last week, who was a former NFL All-Pro linebacker who was paralyzed on the field. And he came back. Now he's one of the leading mindfulness teachers in the world. And we were talking about this very thing, about the law of attraction. And I said to Keith, I said, did you get your NFL All-Pro selection via affirmations and positive thinking? Of course, which he laughed his butt off at, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no, he said, I basically worked 7 days a week ever since I was 8 years old to become an NFL linebacker. So we have to look at these statements and these popular phrases in the media, like the law of attraction, and really break them down before we get sucked into the vortex of mass consciousness.
I like that, the vortex of mass consciousness. And I think people do get sucked in. We want to break this down. We have to go to break. But David, oh my gosh, you've got some great insight here. We're talking with David Essel. He's a #1 best-selling author, life coach, and counselor. We're going to learn how to achieve success and how pretty much everything we've learned probably is not correct. And this is how you can go about it. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay tuned for more.
This blog on TNCRadio.LIVE is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. 6 safety tips for truck drivers while driving in the rain. As a truck driver, you'll experience driving in dangerous weather conditions. Driving in the rain creates difficult and dangerous driving conditions for truckers. It's important for truck drivers to be alert and cautious when driving in the rain. Check out our 6 safety tips for truck drivers while driving in the rain. Slow down. Wet roads make it difficult for a driver to control their truck. A good rule of thumb is to drive 5 miles per hour below the speed limit. In some cases, you might have to drive more than 5 miles an hour below. Professional truck drivers adjust their speed according to the weather. When driving in dangerous conditions, only drive the speed you're comfortable with. Leave space. Leaving the appropriate amount of space between each vehicle will give a truck driver enough time to react. A fully loaded tractor-trailer traveling at 65 miles an hour needs about 5 seconds of space to stop. Drivers will have to increase the space between the cars while driving in dangerous weather conditions. Maintain your vehicle. Having your vehicle routinely checked will make driving in the rain more safe. Frequently check your truck's tires to make sure they have enough tread. Also, check your windshield wipers to see if they're working properly. Avoid standing water. Driving through standing water increases the chance of hydroplaning. Hydroplaning causes a driver to lose control of the truck and can result in serious injuries. Standing water also hides potholes and other debris that might be on the road. It's important to always avoid standing water while driving in the rain. Wear your seatbelt. Wearing a seatbelt is a requirement for all truckers, especially in dangerous weather conditions. Eliminate distractions. While driving in the rain, eliminate all distractions. If you drive with the radio on, turn the volume low so you can concentrate. Avoid touching your GPS or looking at it for long periods of time, and avoid using your cell phone. This blog on TNCRadio.LIVE has been brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. Remember to tune into the Truckers Network radio show with Shelley Johnson, weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. We're talking with David Essel, a #1 best-selling author, life coach, and counselor, who's going to give our drivers some terrific insight on achieving success. David, before we went to break, you said you've thrown away the ideas that knowledge is power, the law of attraction, and all these other theories to achieve success. What does work? How did you come to this realization that some of these theories are pretty much bunk?
Well, Shelley, I've been very gifted to have some brilliant teachers in my life. And, even though I taught some things that are not true and not accurate for 17, 18 years, I've been blessed because I've had people that were lovingly exposing the truth to me without making me feel ignorant or bad or anything like that. So that's one way, is by having really good mentors, which I have several that are just exceptional. But then the other is to look in the mirror and to ask ourselves, is this belief working? Whatever this belief is. I am recovered from 30 years as an alcoholic. And even in this industry, doing the work that I'm doing as a counselor, minister, #1 best-selling author for 30 years, I struggled. That was a long time ago, but it still is a fact that, no matter what it is that we want out of life, we've got to really look in the mirror and say, am I truly a social drinker? Look in the mirror and do I have a weight problem? Look in the mirror of your relationship and, am I doing the best I can for my partner? And you'll notice I'm not saying anything about anyone else but us. I'm not saying, does your partner need to change? I'm saying, what do you need to do differently? I'm not saying, that you're an alcoholic or a non-alcoholic, but look in the mirror. Do you wake up feeling slow? Do you wake up? It doesn't matter if it's every couple of weeks with a hangover, then that's a sign that there's an issue. If your doctor has been talking to you about your cholesterol, your high blood pressure, and you blow it off, there's an amazing story about another spiritual teacher who used to travel the world, and he just passed 2 years ago, telling people that, he is not his body and we are not our bodies. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And he was very famous and I loved him. His name was Ram Dass, a phenomenal teacher. But this is one area that I totally disagreed with him, that we are not our body. And eventually in 1999, unfortunately, because he was a great human being, everything that he said, I believed in except for this. And then in 1999, he had a massive stroke. And when the story came out, his doctor had been telling him for years that his blood pressure was high, that his cholesterol was high, that he was going to run into problems. But he ignored them, just like a lot of us do, Shelley. Mm-hmm. A lot of us will quit going to the doctor when we find out that we have to get on insulin. Or they'll quit going to the doctor when we find out we have to get on high blood pressure medication or something like that. Or they won't even go. And right. Ram Dass, his stroke was so severe that for 2 years he was carried from a bed to a bathroom.
Wow.
And he ended up, talking about the error that he made in that statement. So, number one is look in the mirror. What area of your life are you avoiding? Do you not want to deal with? And Shelley, if we can get every one of our listeners on board with this one concept, mm-hmm. drop all the little tiny easy goals. Pick the one you'd rather not attack. And that one will not only be improved, but what we have found, just like when I went after my own alcoholism, that when I got sober, every area of my life went through the roof. It improved so dramatically. So whatever your one thing is that you don't want to deal with, that you're procrastinating on, it might be an addiction to food. It might be irregular or inappropriate spending habits. It gets you in financial situations. If we just choose that one area and put all of our effort, and maybe you hire an assistant, or you go and buy books or go onto YouTube videos to learn how to make changes, that's where success lies.
I think that people are really good at denial and they don't like to be brutally honest with themselves. How do they get around that? They really have to take a personal inventory of themselves and say, okay, this is what I need to do, rather than blaming the other guy. How do they get over that hurdle?
Oh my gosh, Shelley, that is the $1 billion question. We're past $1 million questions now. That's the $1 billion question. And it comes from your radio show right now. Mm-hmm. That's where it comes from. from having people on that will challenge our own beliefs, which is what I'm doing. I want to challenge because everyone, Shelley, has something to work on. I don't know a soul. And, I work with very successful people and I work with people that are really struggling. Of all the successful people I know, they don't come to me because their life is perfect. They come to me because there's something off. So we need to get real. And the message that you and I are sharing today is one of the most powerful ones for our listeners. And that is, if you get real, listen to the show, listen to Shelley and Tom and I talking, listen to the show, stop tonight, whatever you're doing, before you go to bed, write down the 1 or 2 or 3 areas that could be the big ones to go after. Wake up tomorrow morning, look freshly at that list. Don't lie to yourself. There's 3 tools we use to get out of change: justification, rationalization, and denial. So I'm giving you the keys to look for. So when you take your clothes off and stare in the mirror and go, damn, I need to lose a lot of weight, don't justify it and say, well, I've got big bones. Like, throw that out the window. Get real with yourself. And we do that with everything. Pull out your checkbook. Look at where you are. Look at your bank balances. Look at your debt to income ratio, debt to savings ratio. Like, let's take the blinders off, get the head out of the sand. And I'm saying this with love. I'm not saying this accusing anyone of being lazy. I'm just saying we know the pathway to success. You don't have to recreate the wheel. I promise you, if you do what Shelley and I are talking about and you attack the thing that you've been avoiding, your life will radically change.
So it's basically taking the blinders off, being brutally honest with yourself. But
yes.
How do you keep from running in the other room and going, I don't want to deal with this?
Well, we say to people, there's a program we teach called the 4x4 journaling technique. And we say to people, you can complain all you want about eating healthy. You can complain that you're up at 4 a.m. to walk for an hour. Complain. As long as you do the work, feel free to complain.
There you go. Now, there's some people who just get off on complaining, though.
Well, and you know what? For them, I would say it doesn't do a darn bit of good. If you get up in the morning and you go at 4 a.m. for a walk, and I'm using that as an extreme example, and you complain for the whole hour, I'd rather have you complaining and keep walking than shutting the alarm off and going back to sleep. For those people who are used to coming up with justification, rationalization, or denial, which we can look at as excuses, you're going to have to get that moxie, that internal strength that you have, that everyone has. And I'll give you a quick example. Shelley, how much time do we have left in this segment?
About 2 minutes, just under 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Whatever we don't finish, we can finish after the break. But there was a woman I worked with named Evelyn who was 240 pounds overweight. When she contacted me, the whole key was, what are we eating first? And so she removed all junk food from her house, never went to a fast food restaurant again, never ate junk food. And that was step number 1. It was huge. Step number 2, because of her weight, she had to be wheeled in a wheelchair into a health club, propped up on a treadmill so she could hold the rails while she walked her 3 minutes a day.
Wow.
That's the type of effort we need. Now, fast forward to the end of the story. A number of years later, she went to an event in Las Vegas, walked on stage in front of 15,000 screaming fans as a bodybuilder, Shelley.
Whoa.
On one side of the stage was her at 240 pounds overweight, and then she comes out in a bikini and heels and blew the audience away.
That's amazing. But that's, wow, super determination.
Yes.
But it sounds like she kind of was able to crescendo and gain momentum by doing that. And of course, your book is focused. So she was definitely focused. No doubt about that.
Totally focused. Yeah. Yes.
We're talking with David Essel. He's a #1 best-selling author, life coach, and counselor. We're going to be delving some more into how to achieve success here on the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay tuned for more coming up. 6 safety tips for truck driving in hot weather. Driving in the heat can create dangerous situations for truck drivers. Drivers need to take specific precautions before hitting the road in extreme heat. When there's an incoming heat wave, drivers need to be aware of how to safely drive in these weather conditions. Follow the Truckers Network's 6 safety tips for truck driving in hot weather. Every truck driver needs to complete a pre-trip inspection before driving, especially in hot weather. Check your tires. Heat can have a huge effect on your tires. As the temperature increases, so does the air pressure in your tires. During the hottest months of the year, it's important to frequently check your tire pressure. Frequently checking your tires can save you from a blowout. To get an accurate measurement, wait for your tires to cool down before checking the pressure. The heat and friction from the road causes your tires to warm up, which will cause a rise in tire pressure. Also, don't be afraid to take a break every couple of hours to let your tires cool down. Protect your engine. Not only should you protect yourself from the heat, but you should also protect your engine. One way to keep your engine from overheating is to frequently check the engine oil. The oil keeps the engine cool and keeps the parts running smoothly. Engine coolant is just as important as engine oil. Coolant helps prevent the engine from overheating in extremely hot temperatures. Keep an eye on the coolant temperature gauge while driving. If the gauge goes above the safe temperature, pull over and see what's going on. Failing to look at the situation could lead to engine failure. Also, make sure to check for leaks in the hoses. A cracked hose can lead to engine failure. Check your brakes. Cold and hot weather affect your semi-truck's brakes. When you brake, you create a significant amount of friction and your brakes become extremely hot. When you add in hot weather, your brakes have an even higher chance of failing. To avoid your brakes from failing, brake gradually to decrease the amount of heat. Also, regularly check your brake pads to ensure they're working properly. Tips to protect yourself from the hot weather. It's just as important to protect yourself during extremely hot weather. Follow these tips to keep yourself cool and safe. Stock up on water. As the temperature increases, you need to increase your water intake. Make sure to always have water in your truck. You never know when you might get stuck in traffic or break down on the side of the road. Wear sunscreen. Many truck drivers forget this step. Even when you're in your truck, you're still exposed to the harmful UVA rays. Make sure to put sunscreen on before hitting the road. Wear light-colored clothes. Light-colored clothing reflects light, and dark-colored clothing absorbs it. Wearing light-colored, loose-fitting clothes helps you stay cooler and more comfortable.
Hey, what's up? This is Logan Mize, and you are listening to TNCRadio.LIVE.
This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. We're talking with David Essel, who's a #1 best-selling author, life coach, and counselor, who's giving some tremendous insight on achieving success. You know, David, I'm amazed at that story. Before we went to break, you were talking about the lady who became a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, how did she do that?
Shelley, it's incredible to think about what the human body and brain is able to do when we commit to excellence. It's literally incredible. You know, I mean, I could tell 1,000 stories for you guys on this network about people that have overcome immense challenges in life. And, you know, they just make a decision. I mean, every day we have this choice. You know, when I got sober, I had 30 years of waking up with a choice to get sober, and I waited 30 years. You know, Evelyn, who I was talking about, waited at least 30 years to gain that 240 pounds, to be 240 pounds overweight, and then to become a bodybuilder. But what she found was, as she started to feel better, she needed new goals. And so the ultimate goal for her was to be able to walk on stage and to have this huge blow up of her 240 pounds heavier and to show people what is possible. And I think a lot of times, let's go back to mass consciousness and peer pressure and who we hang out with and all that stuff, Shelley. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, you know, we will attract people into our lives. So now listen very closely to this. So we do not have to change.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the group of people that you're in contact with, and we do this with our clients every 2 weeks. So I have clients write out a list of who you communicate with most every 2 weeks: text, email, phone calls, Phone calls are becoming a thing of the past, it seems like. But, texting, emails, or who you meet in person. And then you write down their first name, and next to them, you write down, are they ahead of you, equal to you, or below you? And what a lot of people find is that they're surrounded by people who are equal to them. And what we really need is we need a couple people in our circle who have something we don't have. Maybe they have a better body, or they have a better financial understanding. Maybe they have a better relationship or a better connection on their spiritual religious path. And so when you start to surround yourself with people that have what you desire, you find this amazing competitiveness, not just with them, but internally, to say, I can do that too. But if you're surrounded with people who don't have a drive to change, who are accepting what I would say is the unacceptable, a life where they're not happy, if that's the main group of people, which for most of us it is, we surround ourselves with like-minded people. So, even though you know that you drink too much and you want to quit, who you hang out with drinks all the time. Or if maybe you smoke and you want to quit, but who you hang out with are smokers. Or maybe you want to lose weight, but you hang out with people that love dessert and you feel the peer pressure to eat dessert with them every day, or to eat junk food, or whatever it is. Again, it's that internal look. And you mentioned it before, Shelley, looking in the mirror and saying, I wonder who elite athletes hang out with. I wonder who people who are financially comfortable hang out with. I wonder who people who are really grounded in their spiritual or religious path hang out with. And the answer to that question is going to be the same or better. So we want to get off of this. I don't know if the word is laziness. Why don't we use the word comfortability? Get away from this comfortable life where you're not improving and you have issues. Start to do the work to shift it. And one of the fastest ways to shift it is to look for people that have what you desire and bring them into your circle. Start to communicate. What do you do? How do you do that to feel so at peace in the middle of stress? What are you doing spiritually? What are you doing physically? These are the type of things I love to have people do to challenge themselves, open up a new cachet of friends, and then inspire each other to keep going.
So it's kind of the phrase, birds of a feather flock together type of thing. That's what we kind of get in a rut, instead of having people who can champion and be mentors so we can actually improve.
Yes, exactly. Birds of a feather. I love it. Exactly. And when I got sober, I lost 90% of my friends.
Yeah.
And that was a good thing.
You weren't hanging out at bars and stuff like that. It makes sense. And they probably didn't want to be around you because you were a good influence.
Yeah. Well, and what happened, Shelley, the first year of my sobriety, I decided to do this on my own. I decided not to go out to lunch or dinner or any events for 12 months. I wanted to ground my recovery, ground my sobriety, and I didn't want any temptation at all. And so I would talk to my friends and they'd say, hey, let's get together for lunch or dinner. And I'd say, I'm only doing breakfast.
There you go.
And within a couple months, I was left with my 10% club. But I want to tell you something. The 10% club, the 10% of people that stayed in my life after I quit drinking. As a matter of fact, I'll give you an example of one of my best friends, Troy. When I came back from the treatment center a long time ago, he contacted me. He said, I want you to text me every day. I want you to let me know that you're doing the work. And then he and I and a couple of our friends used to go to movies, or we used to go out to drink on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. And he said to me, hey, why don't we all get together and every Wednesday night go to a movie instead of a bar? So here's a guy that was still drinking, Shelley, that came up with an idea of something non-alcoholic related.
Interesting.
And he's still in my life today, along with a bunch of other people that are the 10%ers that went to movies with me instead of going out to drink. And so there are people that maybe are right in your circle right now that would support the heck out of you with your new life change.
Sure. And for those that don't, just not talk to them, right? I mean, because...
Well, what we say is that you have a choice. Mm-hmm. The choice would be to cut down your communication dramatically, right? If you're trying to quit drinking or smoking or overeating or overspending. So you look at that list and you say, gosh, Harry's a really funny guy. And I'm just going to level with Harry and say, I'm not drinking anymore, but I still want you in my life. Is there something that we can do that is non-alcohol related. Now, Harry may say, honestly, no, I like to drink more than anything. So you let him go. But Harry may come back with some type of an idea that, you can keep him in your circle. What I've seen happen with myself, Shelley, and so many other people is that it's just sort of a natural falling away.
Mm-hmm.
What I found in my sobriety is that my biggest connection with the 90% of people that left was alcohol. So it was an alcohol friendship. It truly wasn't a deep friendship.
Right. It was something external. It wasn't intrinsic. It wasn't, you weren't sharing anything that was of substance, I guess I'm trying to say. Yep.
Thank you very much. And I can look back now laughing and saying at the time we thought we were filled with substance.
Liquid substance, anyway.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I have a ton of compassion. And part of it is because I'm a counselor, but part of it is just my nature. I have a ton of compassion for anyone struggling with any addiction whatsoever, even the addiction to negativity or negative thoughts, or the addiction to righteousness, always having to have the last word to be right. And then, of course, we have drugs and alcohol and sex addiction and porn addiction and everything in the world. But, there is not a person over 42 years that struggled with an addiction that I've ever worked with and judged them, because they don't need to be judged. They need to make the decision they want help. And then they can find someone, to work with them via phone or Skype or Zoom or something. It doesn't matter if you don't have a home base. The most important thing is to reach out for help, get an accountability partner. That is crucial.
There you go. We're going to be back with David Essel. He's got some great tips on how to succeed here. He's a #1 best-selling author, life coach, and counselor. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay tuned for more.
This blog on TNCRadio.LIVE is brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net. Common mental health issues truck drivers face. Every day the roads are full of heavy-duty trucks. Trucks are responsible for nearly 80% of America's freight. Being a truck driver is not an easy job, and it's not for everyone. Trucking can be hard on an individual, both physically and mentally. Suffering from mental health can put truck drivers in a dangerous situation. To safely operate a heavy-duty vehicle, drivers need to be physically and mentally healthy. Here are 4 common mental health issues that truck drivers face. Why mental health issues are common in truck drivers. Truck driving is a demanding job and can be very stressful at times. A stressful work environment leads to anxiety and depression. In addition to a stressful work environment, truck drivers spend a lot of time alone in their truck. Constantly being alone can affect one's mental health. Although many truck drivers suffer from mental health issues, some are afraid to get help because they fear losing their job. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, that's FMCSA, requires drivers to be in good health before receiving or renewing a commercial driver's license. The trucking industry is predominantly male. A study by RAHM states that men are less likely to get treatment for their mental health than women. It's important for drivers to take care of their mental health as much as their physical health. Common mental health issues in truck drivers. Depression. Depression is an illness that affects you mentally, physically, and emotionally. It's very common in the trucking industry. Being alone and away from friends and family contributes to depression. It's important to know the difference between feeling down and having depression. If you feel that you're experiencing depression, seek out help. Depression is serious and can affect your ability to operate your truck. Anxiety. Because of how stressful trucking can be, anxiety is very common for drivers. This is especially true for new drivers. Many experienced drivers have reported having anxiety and panic attacks while on the road. It's important to know the difference between new driver anxiety and generalized anxiety. If you're often experiencing anxiety while working, take the necessary steps to get help. Chronic sleep disturbances. A good night's rest is crucial to truck drivers. Not having enough sleep can make it dangerous to operate a heavy-duty vehicle. Because of a truck driver's living and work situation, good sleep can be difficult. A NCBI study reports that 20 to 28.6% of truck drivers have an unspecified sleep disorder, and 27.5% of truck drivers are diagnosed with insomnia. Sleep is extremely important for your mental and physical health. If you're experiencing problems sleeping while trucking, consider seeking professional help. Loneliness. Truck drivers spend many days and weeks isolated in their truck. According to Business Insider, nearly a third of drivers say being alone is a significant issue affecting their mental health. This blog on TNCRadio.LIVE has been brought to you by the Truckers Network at app.thetruckersnetwork.net.
You're listening to TNCRadio.LIVE. Remember to tune into the Truckers Network show with Shelley Johnson, weekdays at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern.
This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly. We're talking with David Essel, who's a #1 best-selling author, life coach, and counselor who has some tremendous insight on how to make change and achieve success. David, wow. I don't think that a lot of people talk in the direction you do. I mean, you're being basically asking people to be brutally honest with themselves, but when you think about it, that really is what they need to do, and then focus on what they really want to change.
Yeah, Shelley, if you look at the equation to success, huge success demands huge effort.
Mm-hmm.
That's the equation.
That makes sense.
Right? And so if you have a huge goal, and let's say that's becoming financially stable in 2 years, or you want to lose 50 pounds in a year, or whatever it is, whatever the goal is, we want to our listeners to understand there's going to be effort. You know, the first year of my sobriety was not easy. Ever since then, oh my gosh, but it was a lot of work. The first year was difficult, but was it worth it? Oh my gosh, yes. If you're struggling in your marriage or your relationship, it is so worth it to put a huge effort in. And you can make a timeline, 3 months, 6 months, a year, before you make a decision, I'm out. Now, if someone's being emotionally abused, physically abused, huge addiction, that's a totally different story. So many couples are struggling right now, and there's really not a need to divorce. There's a need to get humble, to learn forgiveness, to learn how to let go of resentments. And Shelley, it sounds easy on the outside. Oh, just forgive your husband, wife, or whatever. But it can take a lot of work, and don't be shy of doing the work. Just like my client, Evelyn, that lost 240 pounds. It took her a couple years. Mm-hmm. Don't be shy of doing the work, because it will pay off. And I mentioned a few minutes ago about accountability partners. It's crucial. Mm-hmm. Find someone that will text you daily and say, hey, did you work out today? Hey, are you eating clean? Hey, are you still sober? I've got this young kid. Thank God he contacted me, 28 years of age, who is really struggling with drugs and alcohol. He texts me every day, and he just celebrated 3 weeks of no drugs and alcohol.
Excellent.
And it was because he had an accountability partner that he had to text. So find someone, don't do it alone, and start to live the life you've always wanted.
Now, accountability partner doesn't mean a nag, correct? I mean, some people might think that.
No, as a matter of fact, honestly, the best accountability partners are people that are not family, are not coworkers, are not neighbors. Okay. We really want to have someone a little bit more objective. Of course, you can look at ministers, counselors, coaches, financial advisors, personal trainers, nutritionists as accountability partners. But we really do need someone that understands change, understands commitment, and will hold our feet to the fire. Without that, it's kind of hard. I never would have got sober on my own, Shelley. No matter how many people I've helped getting sober, I could not do it on my own.
So where do people find you? I mean, you've got some tremendous insight. I'm sure you've got materials that people can read, your books and all of that. Where do we find you?
It's so super easy. Just go to talkdavid.com, TALK David.com. Shelley, it's what I do 21 hours a day, so it's an appropriate name for my website.
I like that.
But talkdavid.com, you can find our books. There's free programs there. There's online courses that are incredibly inexpensive. You can go to YouTube and Google David Essel. We have 2,000 free videos on YouTube. And then, of course, any social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Just Google David Essel. You can follow me, find me there. But take advantage of the site because there's a lot of free stuff there, talkdavid.com.
I love your perspectives and your insight, and I think people can learn a lot and get motivated. And hopefully you'll get a lot of our audience saying, hey, guess what you were helpful in me doing? And that's just got to be a wonderful blessing when you hear that from people, too. I really appreciate you being on the show, David. We've been talking with David Essel. He's a #1 best-selling author, life coach, and counselor. And definitely check out his website. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.LIVE. Stay tuned for more coming up.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast.
Thank you for listening to another great interview on TNCRadio.LIVE and the Truckers Network radio show. All of the material you hear on TNCRadio.LIVE on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of TNCRadio.LIVE and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live.